We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's June 7th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yeun, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Nail Song.
Good morning, everyone.
And today we have a very special guest. It's Kwon Joo-hyun. Welcome, Joo-hyun.
Hello, everybody. Well, this is Kwon Joo-hyun. I'm a news presenter at Arirang Radio, and it's so nice, so lovely to see you guys today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you here today on our show.
Thank you so much.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Now, Korean temple food is apparently the latest craze among millennials and Gen Z. According to Related Industries on Monday, a temple food restaurant in Seoul named in the Michelin Guide has already been fully booked for this month. The hashtag Temple Safe Food also went viral, and experts believe this is because millennials and Gen Z are highly interested in looking for healthy pleasure and dieting. Now, the CEO of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, paid a visit to South Korea for the first time in 5 years. After traveling to China, Taiwan, and Japan over the past week, Dimon came to Seoul on Monday and has since met with the country's top financial leaders. The Wall Street mogul told reporters he wanted to find out what position South Korean financial institutions would take amid toughened U.S.-China relations. Now, Dimon said in many numerous press interviews that decoupling with China was not the way to go. And recently in Korea, the name Chung Yoo-jung hit headlines. She's a 23-year-old charged with the murder of a woman in her 20s in Busan. Chung met the victim, a university student and freelance tutor, on a tutoring matching app. What outraged the public was that she confessed that she killed the victim simply out of curiosity. Since then, police have administered psychiatric tests, and it turns out Chung has been diagnosed with psychopathy, and police are planning to submit the test results to prosecutors later today. Now, we're going to take a closer look at the last hashtag. Police have extended time to investigate Chung Yoo-jung because of her unclear motives. To share more details on how it happened, Chung allegedly met the victim through a tutoring matching app. She then disguised herself as a parent who wanted to teach her child English. And on the day of the murder, which was May 26th, she allegedly dressed up in a school uniform to look like a student and then killed her tutor at her house. Now, what's shocking authorities is how calm Chung was. The CCTV footage reportedly shows Chung dragging a suitcase with the dismembered victim inside it. Now, Chung allegedly changed into the victim's clothes because there were bloodstains on the uniform she was wearing at the time. And Joo-hyun, when I first heard this story, I was very shocked because of how easily the suspect found her victim. And she met her target on a tutoring matching app, which I've also used in the past. And it made me think about, could a lot of college students have actually deactivated their accounts as well, which made me think, could you actually blame them? It's so scary to be using these apps. And some are even saying that we need more screening for those who actually use apps like these. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, tutoring matching application itself, it is a system that strangers meet strangers. So I definitely believe that it is exposed to certain risks. So why don't we conduct a psychopath test for everybody who would like to join the application? And one more suggestion is that why don't we hire a broker? The application, the company itself should hire a broker. I mean, a broker that can facilitate the connection between the two parties, like a real estate agent.
For sure. I think
a good
it's
idea.
a great idea. And I think we should have a psychiatric test for the broker as well.
Yeah, make sure. Just make sure.
Make sure everyone is safe there. And the Busan Metropolitan Police Agency has actually disclosed Chung's name, age, and photo 6 days after the arrest. And in Korea, authorities revealed the info of the suspect considering how dangerous or violent the criminal act was. And on the internet, some have been arguing that the standards of authorities revealing suspects' info isn't too fair, and some are looking at this as a gender issue. But what are your thoughts on this?
You know, I think in comparison to the Busan male who kicked a woman, and he was actually revealed by a YouTuber, and there was another man who was trying to lure elementary girls, and he's had prior convictions. So for this particular case, her information was revealed a lot more quickly, and there are cases where, you know, profile is revealed 5-6 days after the arrest. So I can see why people are saying, you know, this is a gender issue because Chung is a woman. While it may be unfair, I just think other criminals' profiles should have been revealed just as quickly, you know, and I think in terms of punishment, rehabilitation first and foremost is key. There needs to be education, there needs to be psychotherapy so they don't commit the same crimes again. But not to say that we should, overlook their crimes. This definitely deserves some, serious punishment, like lifelong sentences. Murder, sex crimes should be taken very, very seriously.
For sure. So you're just saying, as much as it's important to penalize these people, it's also important to, reinforce our rehabilitation.
For sure.
And all right, that was our news feed for this Wednesday. Let's move on to today's discussion topic. Now, take a look at the screen to find out what we'll be talking about. 언니, 누나, 아줌마, 이모. These are all different ways you can refer to other women here in Korea. Confusing, right? Especially for foreigners.
I feel like people just mainly say out of respect because maybe they don't know someone's age, so they just say that just in case someone is older than them.
I feel like there's a sense of seniority. In Korean culture, it's like a very senior base and like a lot of much like you have to a term like it's more like you're friends with them, but since they're older than you, you call them Unnie.
Out of respect.
Or like hyung. Same thing, out of respect or out of like, even though you're friends, you still want to keep that level of like basically respect and showing admiration for them in a way.
Yeah, but I feel like in the States there's not like that respect culture for like someone maybe 2 years older than you. Like you will still just call them out of like their name. Like for example, Raj is older than me. I just call him Raj. I don't call him like Raj. What would be the oppa? So I just call him Raj.
Another aspect to this issue is that Korean titles have different connotations behind them, which can sometimes cause offense or conflict.
I don't want to be called Ahjumma, maybe Imo, but I'm young. I would prefer Unnie.
If you call me ahjeossi, I'd think you're trying to pick a fight. I would get angry. I'd much rather be called a student.
Today, NewsGen aims to answer 3 questions. 1. What's the different nuance behind these different titles used in Korea? 2. How can different understanding of these nuances lead to conflicts? 3. Are there similar concepts abroad? So as you just saw on the screen, I went to the streets of Gangnam asking people what type of titles they prefer to be called. And here in Korea, there's just so many different ways you can refer to other people, and it all depends on what your gender is and how old you are. But for more, why don't you walk us through all these different confusing titles there are here in Korea?
Yes. So I've actually prepared a visual aid for our short little Korean lesson for the day. Let's take a look at the screen.
All right.
You may have actually heard of these terms before. 언니 is a female younger sibling calling an older female sibling. So in my case, I would call an older girl 언니 if we're close, whether we're related actually or not. Oppa, again, is a female calling an older male sibling. But in Korea's case, it's often used in like a loving way to call your boyfriend who is older. And, for men, it's either hyung for older males or 누나 for older females. And sometimes your boyfriend who's younger than you may kind of, flirt with you by calling you 누나 instead of your name. But I personally cannot stand that because I have a younger brother and that, creeps me out like nothing else. And
You don't want to hear
see
Nuna.
how this is confusing, right? Yeah.
For sure. And when I actually talked to the people at Gangnam, a lot of people were familiar with the terms oppa or 언니, all because of K-pop and K-dramas.
Right.
And I think a lot of global viewers could agree that they've heard about them. And there are different nuances that these two words have. For instance, as you mentioned, Nuna might be that little... it could refer to your older sister.
I prefer Nuna.
I like Nuna too.
Yes.
Yeah. But that might be because I don't have a younger brother.
Do you have a
Me
younger
neither.
brother?
I don't have a brother.
That's
Yeah.
why. See, there's different nuances to these words, and we wanted to ask our global viewers if they were well aware about the different nuances and the terms we have in Korea. Also, if they have any similar ones themselves. So take a look at the screen to find out what 3 of them had to say. Danny Omega said in Pakistan, we can call any male bai, which means brother, which is equivalent to hyung oppa, and any female baji, which means sister, which is equivalent to Korean 언니 누나. Ashika said, in India, for official purposes, we usually use ma'am or sir, and we do use bai behen, usually for younger ones, which refers to brothers and sisters, and baya didi, which means hyung 언니 in Hindi. Benny said, in the Philippines, I always address people people as sir, ma'am, and eight, which means 언니, 누나 in Filipino, kuya, which means oppa, 형 in Filipino. It's quite fascinating to see that there's so many different titles in other countries as well, don't you think?
That's right, and it's so interesting to learn that there are some countries using certain words for brothers and sisters. Let's pretend that we are in Turkey. That means 예은 and Nail. You should call me Abla. Abla means 언니. Abi for oppa.
Oh, is it also used kind of like in a cute way for boyfriends as well? Like Abby.
Yes, you can use that like an Abi in that way. Yes.
Oh, okay, I see. You know, it's also funny because I used to live in Morocco and they do have this word for brother, khoya, but they usually don't say that in like a loving way between boyfriend girlfriends. But I do want to talk about how they call people in restaurants, like waiters. Like, you know, we would just say Mohammed, which is a very common name, Mohammed or Si Mohammed, Simo, and it's like calling somebody 철수야 in Korea in a restaurant, but people would turn their heads because it's almost a mutual understanding that, you know, that's how you call waiters.
So even though your name is not Mohammed,
yeah, it could be Omar, but they would still turn when you say Mohammed.
And Tersia, for those of our viewers who might not know, it's a very common Korean male name, like along with Minsu.
That's right.
Younghee in Korean. So definitely it is fascinating to see, but I think it could be confusing if you're a foreigner who just came to Korea or is visiting to hear all these different titles being used for different scenarios. So we're going to hear from an actual global millennial who's been living in Seoul for a few years to find out which titles were most confusing for him. To find out more about how confusing different titles can be in Korea, we're going to include Lee Ratty in our talks. Now, Lee's been living in Korea for 11 years now. Welcome back, Lee. Lee, can you hear us?
Oh, hi.
Hello.
It's good to see you, ladies, or my sisters. 여동생.
Yeah. Yeah.
학생들, I love that.
학생들.
Me too.
We like that.
I
None
love
of us
being
are
called
students.
Exactly. Now, I would like to ask you the first question of our interview. Which title made you most confused when you first came to Korea? Was it 언니, oppa, ahjumma? Which one was it?
Yeah, it's definitely how you refer to your sisters. Because when I first came to Korea, actually, all the people that I was working with and that I was learning Korean from, you know, these are the people that I copy when I use my Korean. And so, of course, you know, I've had so many embarrassing situations where it just slips out, where I'm like, oh, 언니, oppa. And it's like, oh, once you say it, you're like, oh, no. Very embarrassing.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I've had those similar situations in other countries, but you know, you're from the States, so compare the United States where you oftentimes when you get close to people call them by names. What do you think of, you know, South Korea's title culture? What do you think it is like?
You know, it's definitely more formal than the States, and there's, you know, some great things about it. In the States, you know, someone said before it's about respect, and I don't think it is. I think it's just a different way of communicating respect in the States, because in the States, there's people value the sense of sincerity and openness. Not that it is sincere, but the sense of it. And so, hey, we're just peers. And if someone is older or has a more senior title, they're going to be quick to say, hey, just call me by my first name, okay? Just call me Tom.
Tom.
You know, we're close. You can be real with me. You can be honest. First name basis.
Interesting
But
indeed.
I think the title culture here, I think it's nice because it gives you a clear sense of who's who, like right from the beginning. And I think it's really enduring to call, you know, guys and girls like your brothers and your sisters. That's definitely nice. However, I mean, I've had so many times where I only call a person by their title, and then I realize after a long time, I don't even know their name.
Oh, no.
If you have trouble remembering names, I guess it's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, so may I call you Lee?
Of course. Please, yeah.
Yeah,
Be
so Lee, so in Korea, do you actually use those different types of names that Korean people use? And one more question. Let's say that you met a stranger on the street. What is your go-to phrase if you've got to talk to them?
Yeah, of course. I definitely try to use the right titles because I want to operate by the culture. But there's a lot of times where I still don't know what to say exactly, or I'm afraid, Ahjumma for sure. But in the times where it's ambiguous, I don't want to make a person feel bad. So also, if you were to refer to someone's job title like lower than they are, 팀장님, 부장님. So sometimes I avoid that just so I don't make them feel bad. And so my rule is, if it's a man, 아저씨, and if it's a woman, 저기요. Excuse me.
Very wise.
We're actually going to be talking about that right after our interview, so please stay in tune. But I would like to ask you the last question. Any tips you'd like to give other foreigners who might find it really difficult to know what to call someone, especially when they're just out on the streets and may have a question?
Right, yeah. Okay, so good tip is, in terms of age, just always aim lower. So 할머니 is 아줌마. Ahjumma, emo. Emo is Unnie or Nuna, and Nuna is 학생. There you go.
Okay.
And when in doubt, 저기요.
That's
a
great.
good tip.
Lee.
That's very
aim
practical.
lower. I think that's the most realistic and the most efficient way to go. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on our show today.
Good luck out there, everyone.
All right, and Lee mentioned a lot of great tips. I mean, he's been living here for 11 years, so all the tips he have, you should take it in for sure. Now, but not only are these different titles used difficult and confusing, but they have so many different nuances which can sometimes lead to conflicts. So, Xian, why don't you talk to us about some conflicts caused by people addressing certain people with the wrong title?
Of course. Well, I reckon many expats are confused by this title, emo or aunt, in restaurants, of course. So when Koreans dine out, they call the waitress emo. 반찬 좀 더 주세요. Give us more side dishes. By the way, it's free of charge.
Yes,
on board.
free.
So you might think that, are they family? Are they related? Are they bonded? No, they are not. They're not a huge family. Well, to clarify, emo, it means aunt or mother's sister. But the thing is, it is often used as a friendly way to call the waitress in Korean restaurants.
It's exactly like Mohammed in Morocco, as you mentioned.
Right, indeed.
Exactly like that. And actually, when you're shopping, you'll find that people will call you Unnie, no matter how old they are and no matter how old you are. So it could be a 30-year-old person calling a 50-year-old 아주머니, like Unnie, because you want your customers to feel good, and it's like a polite way of calling, miss. Yeah. So that's like a fun way to, it could even be a male shop owner calling a female client Unnie, and that's not strange.
It's not strange at all. But to be honest, when I first came to Korea, I was quite surprised when my mom, she was in her 40s, called this other hair salonist in her 20s Unnie. I was like, Oma, you're not. She's clearly much younger than you. But as Lee mentioned, I think lowering the aim of the age is always polite, especially here in Korea. But what do you think are the titles that really irk you? You don't want to hear this out in public. Are there any that, annoy you?
Well, so far, nobody has called me Ahjumma yet. I'll put the condition yet. Yeah, Ahjumma, middle-aged woman or a married woman. But generally speaking, people feel free to call an older man ahjeossi. They don't feel offended, right? But if somebody calls me Ahjumma, I won't be happy. I won't see that person ever, because I think that I would think that my physical appearance, the way I'm speaking, my attitude, my style are being criticized.
Right.
Still, Ahjumma has an image of being aggressive, self-centered in public places, hunting for empty seats. That's true.
Yeah.
So instead of using Ahjumma, I suggest, why don't we use 사모님?
사모님.
사모님. It means, it indicates a wealthy woman or married woman, middle-aged married woman.
Madam.
So, madam, that's right.
Yeah.
So if somebody calls me 사모님, I am willing to buy everything he or she sells.
We write that down right
I know,
now.
write that down. Calling her 사모님 from now on.
Speaking of Ahjumma and 아저씨, I've also prepared a chart to define what they are. So let's take a look at my CG.
Okay.
Here we go. So Ahjumma, as we've been discussing, is originally supposed to refer to an older woman, and we often take it as kind of offensive these days, but it's just supposed to be a familiar form of 아주머니, and it's meant for relatives on the same level on the family tree as one's mother. And among strangers, like we said, it's referring to a married woman. 아저씨 in a family context is for any male relative on the same level as your father, but not his brothers. For strangers, it's just anybody who is an adult man. So it's really just subjective for whoever's viewing you as an adult or an older woman or married woman or not.
But I have to say, I would not like to be called Ahjumma for a long while.
Me neither.
Yeah, I would prefer Unnie, or as
Right.
Lee mentioned, 학생, student.
That's right.
Because, you
Love
seem
that.
much younger. And as Lee mentioned, I think there are some phrases or titles you can get away with almost in any situation. It could be practically like a Joker card, don't you think? What is those titles that we should be looking for?
I think 사장님, which is supposed to mean, like the shop owner, CEO, or boss person. If you call somebody 사장님 in a shop, even if they're like a part-time worker, they'll turn around and see because they know you're looking for somebody in charge.
Right.
And I know this one isn't a title, but Lee actually mentioned it. You call a man 아저씨 and a woman 저기요. 저기요 is kind of like an excuse me. It's an 저기요, 저 is showing that you're careful to start a conversation
Right.
with them. So that will always work.
We were talking with our male producer before our show, and he said he didn't like 아저씨 either, though.
That's true.
Felt offended.
yeah, he was
So
he was a little offended.
저기요. Yeah.
So maybe 저기요 for all situations, like an excuse me. Any Joker card of yours, Jihan?
Well, I recommend some words like this. 님. Or she, Mr. or Mrs. after the names. That will be a perfect way to address someone. Not to the old. That will sound
No.
quite rude, unpolite. And, if you don't know their names, this is the answer for them. 선생님. Or teacher. Of course, they are not real teachers teaching at schools, but professional, strangers, female or not, older or younger. Teacher, 선생님 is the best way, the appropriate way to call them. And FYI, never ever call a person or stranger, not close one, if you're not close with them, don't call them yeah.
no.
Like this, yeah.
Yeah, that's a no-no.
It means,
That's a no-no.
hey dude, hey buddy,
Yeah.
hey
Yeah.
mate.
Hey, mate.
Keep
It's
that in
almost like
mind.
yo.
Yeah, it's like, yo.
That's right.
Yeah.
Perfect way, yeah. Don't say that to a
Yeah.
stranger.
Yeah, I think regardless of whether you're in Korea or not, I think in any country, it's always best if you don't know that person, aim high for their profession and aim low for their age. I think those are
right.
two tips you should go for. And all right, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Nelsong.
No problem.
And Jian, it was your first day on our show.
I was quite nervous.
Wonderful to have you,
It
though.
was wonderful to have you. Hope we can see you again soon.
Yes, so fingers crossed.
All right, special thanks to Kwon Ji-hyun.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
You